Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. This is a pretty good crowd, isn't it? Yeah. We were in executive session, we're out, and now we're back into regular session. I think the first thing we have, do we have any statements? Anybody signed up? Hayden Connor Koontz. Transphobia.
Do I come over here?
Yeah, and say who you are, a little bit about where you live in the community. Tell us a little bit about yourself so we know how to frame what we're listening to.
I'm Hayden Connor Koontz. I'm a junior at Cleveland Heights High, and I've lived in Cleveland Heights my whole life. So, as some of you may be aware, a transphobic slur was used during the opening of Cleveland Heights High School's production of Shrek. Ever since the rehearsal, I've been a strong voice in getting the slur removed from the play. As a transgender person, I found it disgusting that a cisgender person was saying that slur to an audience full of mostly our children. Ever since coming out in 8th grade, I've faced harassment and targeting. It got especially worse during the production of the play when certain VMD students went out of their way to harass us and let us know that they did not care. So far this year, I've had to face many battles, including using the bathroom, having a school environment free of harassment from both security guards, teachers, and students. I've had to fight every day against students and teachers harassing me. I've been called the very slur that we were trying to have removed from the play in the school so far this school year. I've had to fight constantly just to have a place in the school and to be heard, something that most kids are handed without second thought. Every battle I've had to fight for these simple rights, most people have taken for granted. That's why I was so outraged when I heard a cisgender student defy direct orders of an administrator and use a slur that I had fought so hard and exhausted myself to get removed. When punishment was handed down, the tormenting only got worse, overhearing students say things like, the trannies and stage crew got him kicked out, and so much more. After all the battles I fought, I felt silenced and beaten down. Then droves of cis adults told me to deal with it or grow up, or that kids make mistakes. I'm a kid too, and yet I've been tasked with the fights of an adult. Trans kids are kids, and they should not have to fight for a seat at the table. I had a meeting with the superintendent today, and I'm feeling optimistic about the future of this situation. I just don't want it to be swept under the table, which is why I wanted to make a statement here today. Thank you.
We appreciate it, and we certainly are sensitive to these issues, and I'm hoping, and we will ask the superintendent to really stay on this, and let's try to figure out how we need to move forward. And I believe we might have gotten an email from you. Was it from you? Yeah. So we appreciate you standing up, because I think it's not the easiest thing in the world. And I don't know, do you have something you want to say, Cal?
No, it's simply I concur with everything you said. I think that this is a discussion that needs to happen. I think the students need to I think some of what the superintendent's talking about is a student leadership group, and I think that that can go an awfully long way. Oftentimes, and I'll speak for myself because I don't want to take everyone in with it, my generation has not done a fabulous job of knowing how to handle some of the more difficult conversations. I think your generation is doing a heck of a lot better job. That does not in any way deny the pains you felt along the way. But it is a difficult conversation that people are just now learning how to have, and I think that we should be the leaders in this area.
Okay. Next, we have Fiona Connor, transphobia education.
Well, I decided to speak not knowing whether Hayden was going to speak or not, so I'll be somewhat repetitive. But my name is Fiona Connor, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of my son Hayden, who just spoke, and any students who have been victimized because they're transgender. Issues come up frequently, such as misgendering by staff, access to gender-neutral bathrooms, and bullying. We address these at the school level, but change is slow and the battle is constant. The need for education of students and staff was never more apparent than during the preparation and performance of the Shrek musical. The use of hate speech in the name of art is never okay and can never be justified. This message was not clearly conveyed to students involved and bullying resulted. I'm pleased Dr. Dixon met with my son today as a follow-up to an email he sent, and I'm encouraged she committed to bringing an outside group such as Trans Ohio to provide information and education to the students in vocal music and stage crew who are most closely involved and affected. I was not pleased that days and days of bullying were allowed to occur because a clear message was never presented to students by the adults in closest contact with these students. This hurt cannot be undone, but further hurt must be prevented. Removal of a transgender slur, which is established hate speech, can never be only because one administrator said so. The need to do this has to be understood and embraced by all involved staff and students from the outset. I trust that the promised education will take place and that students and staff will be held accountable for treating transgender individuals with respect, understanding, and acceptance moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I think it takes courage in today's world to speak out, and we appreciate you speaking out. And the board will certainly move the administration to deal with this issue.
And I wanted to thank Hayden, who agreed to be one of the student leaders, and agreed also to bring some other students to help us at the high school. So thank you.
Great. Okay, so that moves us to awards and recognitions, and I think we have some master teachers that we want to recognize.
Yes, we have some others. Let me go first. Okay. So good evening and welcome. Tonight we have the opportunity to recognize a number of CHUH staff members who are excelling in their profession. So first I want to recognize our Tiger Team members of the month of October. So this year our theme comes from Strategic Plan Goal 4, Value Professionals and Creating a Culture of Excellence. And in that spirit, each month we will be recognizing employees who go above and beyond to create a culture of excellence in this district. So last month we honored our first group of Tiger Team members of the month. Each honoree was nominated by a colleague, and in some cases, multiple colleagues. We received more than 50 nominations, which we were voted upon by a committee of staffers from across the district. So tonight, we have several of those chosen honorees with us tonight. So when I read your name, please come forward. So we have a couple teachers who cannot make it tonight because of staff at the high school, parent-teacher conference. So we have math from Heights High. We have math teacher Joyce Volkovic. From Monticello at Heights High Middle School, we have Dean of Students Jane Dubsky. And Administrative Assistant Charlene Lightfoot. From Roxborough at Heights Middle School, we have avid teacher Leah Radke. From Boulevard Elementary School, we have STEM program specialist Jackie Taylor. From Canterbury Elementary School, we have Rita Hogg, special education aide. I don't think she could be with us tonight. From Fairfax Elementary, Title I Literacy Lead, Kristen Kephart. Is she here? From Garrity Professional Development School, we have school counselor Heather Hingham. That's Heather. From Noble Elementary School, ACL Ancillary Heather Richardson. From Oxford Elementary, third grade teacher Alexia Boyles. From Roxbury Elementary School, attendance secretary Tanya Neerage. And from the Board of Education Central Office, Program Specialist for Technology, Dr. Christina Bauer. So congratulations to all of our honorees, and thank you for your efforts in promoting excellence for Cleveland Heights University High School District. Let's give them a round of applause again.
Oh, they're gonna want me to come.
Probably so, yeah. You're on.
Oh, yeah.
Get up there, buddy.
But I can-
It's like The Price is Right, come on down. You gotta be very excited though.
Lay across the middle.
They have medical issues with the phone. They have to minimize that risk.
Okay, so next we will honor our 2017 Master Teachers. And I wanted to say this publicly because we usually do this the day of, at the beginning of the year at our opening ceremonies for Master Teachers. And I want to take full responsibility that it didn't happen this year because I was so excited about bringing Ron Clark to the district that it was totally my oversight that it didn't happen during Convocation Day. So next we're going to bring Dr. Paul Lombardos, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, to present these accomplishments and say a few words about the Master Teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have the elementary school and middle school. We're going to be honoring the master teachers. And at the December 19th meeting, we will be honoring the high school because they have conferences. We wanted to honor them in December. We have two of the five here tonight, and they're receiving recognition for the mastery in teaching. The master teacher designation means that an educator demonstrates excellence inside and out of the classroom through consistent leadership and focused collaboration. The master teacher also has a wealth of knowledge on his or her subject matter, is sensitive to diverse student needs, and sets the bar high for all students in an environment that's allowed them to achieve. We do have Sarah Adair here, who's a first grade teacher at Oxford and the master teacher chair, and I wanted to bring her up to say a little bit more about the master teacher.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dixon, for recognizing our master teachers this year. We were a little disappointed that they weren't recognized at Convocation, so we're excited that we can recognize them here tonight. And just so everyone knows, this is a big deal that people have to do to earn this designation. It's not just, oh, they write a little paper, oh, they take a test. They have to complete a portfolio that shows that they are accomplished in the areas of consistent leadership, focused collaboration, distinguished teaching, and continued professional growth. And they have to show their work. So it's something then that has to be scored before a group of their peers. So we're really excited that so many people continue to do this, and we hope that we have more in our district in the future. So we're excited to honor our guy that's here tonight.
Excellent. What I'll do is I'll read all the names, and then we'll have the two that are here to come up. You'll also be given a plaque, which will be displayed in the school, so your name will always be there at the school level. So, Patrick Carpenter is a third grade ELA and Title I lead at Oxford Elementary School, master teacher. He was unable to be with us tonight. Leslie Garrett, an IB program specialist from Monticello at Heights Middle School and Fairfax Elementary School. Melissa Garkar, IB program specialist at Roxborough and Heights Middle School, Roxborough Elementary, and Canterbury, so she does go to different schools. And then we have the two that we'd like to honor that are here tonight is Mark Doherty, Spanish teacher at Heights Middle School. If you please come up. plaque as well. Congratulations, Mark. Take that in the plaque, please stand up front here. And we do have Teresa Taylor-Ware, Title I, lead at Noble Elementary School. Please stand up.
I will say on behalf of all of us that the only reason we did this was to walk across the stage.
What did he say?
So again, thank you to our master teachers, and I don't want you to take it lightly that my oversight at the beginning of the school year, so we're gonna make that up to you. And again, to our employees of the month, I am so excited that we started that, and we were so overwhelmed by the number of your peers who were saying that you were going over and beyond. So that's a wonderful thing to see, that we have so many district employees that we were not recognizing, and we wanted to say, you know what, we value you, we want to recognize you and show you how important you are to this organization. So congratulations to all of you. I am proud to be able to serve you as superintendent. All right, that ends for our recognitions tonight.
This consent agenda. So am I supposed to read this? Am I supposed to read this? Yeah. But I guess the question is, am I supposed to read it? I mean, I can see it. It's not a problem.
Use that for presentations and just.
It's like this. Behaviors.
Or do a second one,
I suppose.
because you're gonna.
I'm trying to save money. I'm
Well,
being
no,
fiscally
no.
responsible.
Well, no, because you need a projector for presentations.
I think we ought to let people know.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, but I'm not sure why that's.
Well, we're glad you're staying here with us. We are trying for the first time tonight to use a consent agenda to do our business. So basically, the action involved is that we ask, we have a resolution that be it resolved that we have a consent agenda which includes items in the following categories: meeting minutes, personnel, policies for approval, education services, business services, and finance. So I think I can take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Oh.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so this is just to approve the consent agenda, not the items that are underneath the agenda.
No.
No, this is.
No,
consent.
it's the items underneath the agenda, yes.
Right, okay, so we're just to do the consent agenda. This is not this is not
This is the
approving.
consent agenda.
Well, I think what we're doing is passing, the resolution is to approve the items that are contained in the consent agenda.
For tonight.
for tonight.
Okay, so it's not discussing whether or not we do a consent agenda or not.
Right.
It's this consent agenda.
This is an attempt to see if it works. And I think the impetus,
I think it could work.
and I think if memory serves, the impetus is so instead of going through all the boilerplate stuff where we're pretty much gonna having 10 or 15 votes where I get the motion, make a motion and somebody else seconds it just to move forward. I think the idea is to have one vote on all of these items, but we'll still have the ability to ask questions in regard to those items like we normally would, but instead of doing the roll call 15 times, we would do it just one time. Unless there's something that somebody wants to abstain on or vote, or not vote no on, in which case we may pull that out, would be my understanding.
Right.
So when it comes to the last item, finance, I think that is a significant enough item we need to be presented to. I mean, even if it's staying the same, that's something I don't feel comfortable being included in the consent agenda.
So you think it should be something like the superintendent's report? Because the superintendent's report is something I have separate, so.
I think it's something it's probably one of the most important things that we look at every month.
In that case, if we have a superintendent's report, we hire two people, we hire a treasurer, perhaps we have a treasurer's report.
That is a perfect solution.
So
What I do?
would you want those items, so for example, there's the monthly financial statements as part of the financial report, but
Right.
also we have two minor items like the confirming purchase order and another thing. What else is under finance? So would you want separate votes on all those items, or are the financial statements or the five-year forecast the component that you're stressing be pulled out and have some conversation at the
I
end?
would be okay if we just had a single vote on voting for all the finance
For all
issues
finance items, but outside of the consent agenda.
outside of the consent agenda.
So you'd have like a treasurer's consent, you'd have basically a superintendent's consent and the treasurer's consent.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, Eric, that's a great idea. I mean, there's two primary people that, well, essentially work for the elected board, and it's the superintendent and the treasurer, and having separate reports from them, I think, make a lot of sense. Even if it's boilerplate, and obviously we need to read them first, but I just think it's, our finances are,
Okay, procedurally, we would need to have an amendment to the motion on the floor.
I think, in the spirit of tonight, let's just move forward with the consent agenda as you've done this, but I think for everything in the future, I would be okay if we just did that for everything in the future.
I don't think that's a problem.
Fair enough.
I have no problem with that. So, because I won't be here.
Okay, so specific questions regarding the items that we're being asked to vote on. There are some things in there regarding night school that seem new to me. Not necessarily who's part of that process and what their salaries are. I just don't recall we ever having people we've hired to do night school for. And maybe I missed it.
Yep. We've had night school. Do you have that report? You want to come up? You want to provide that report? Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We've had night school in Cleveland Heights, University Heights, we know for at least the last 8 years. The names that you see in the report are actually the teachers that will be teaching during the night school courses. We've kind of revised it so that we have 3 sessions, one in the winter, one in the fall, one in the winter, and one in the spring session. But these are courses to assist students with graduation requirements. And currently, right now, we have 33 students that are enrolled.
So I guess, since you said it was students working towards graduation and then the evening, would this fall under the, I don't want to use the wrong word, not say rubric, it falls under that scope of trying to get we talk about our graduation rate being 4 years, would this be part of that 5-year attempt to get students out and improve that 5-year graduation rate?
Yes.
Okay.
It's really for 4 and 5 year.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Is that good?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's fine.
Okay.
And what Ms. Gould is going to work on too is getting some trend data for you to kind of show you how long and how many students have matriculated through the program.
Yeah, I
But
think
it's
a good
been
idea.
8 years.
Good.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Mr. Gaynor?
Mr. Register?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Zucker?
Yes.
Mr. Silverman?
We're not using the.
We're not, yeah, I was gonna.
yeah.
We're not.
Oh, why did I bring?
Because
Yes.
I'm remiss.
Ron
And
did brings
Beverly's,
technology.
and Beverly's
And Beverly
doesn't
prefers.
work.
Mine's
And
dead.
Jim's
We-
is
I
dead too,
mean,
so
we're in trouble.
there's trouble afoot. So
That sounded
we're just
so
swinging it
dire.
all the way around tonight. Mr. Silverman?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes. I'm not gonna make it sarcastic.
Slaves to technology. Terrible.
And just as a note, if you could see that we have a section that's just for ed services. We decided to pull the field trips out
Yeah, yeah.
in a separate from the superintendent's report. So they have their own section now for ed services.
You don't like telling us about the field trips?
No, because it's something you have to vote on. So we try to keep all of that under.
Bothering
We
you.
could say,
So the ed services
We
piece
voted already.
was not part of the consent agenda.
no, it is, but I'm just saying, I usually report under superintendent's
right,
report.
right.
But yes, so that will be under, yeah. So textbooks, adoptions, and all of those things now will come under ed services now instead of under the superintendent's report.
So now that we've voted on this and it passed, we've done all of those 10 or 15 motions, now we can go into the
Yep.
super's report?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Right.
so I think that consent agenda
Okay.
passed. So we are now at the superintendent's report.
Okay. Okay, so thank you. I would like to call Karen Liddell Anderson, our Director of Student Services, to give the board a report on the John Peterson Special Needs Scholarship.
Good evening. Let me get this adjusted and hopefully get this pulled up. I was asked to provide a brief overview, emphasis on the word brief, given my history of being long, of the John Peterson Scholarship and the Autism Scholarship programs. Briefly, the John Peterson Scholarship was created in 2011. This provides scholarships for students in various disability groups, K through 12. The scholarship can be used at various service providers, and it is a parental choice. What is the value of the Peterson Scholarship? The scholarship amounts vary depending on the student's disability area, and it ranges from $7,588 to $27,000. The value of the scholarship in this slide just shows you the varying values based on the different disability areas, beginning with speech language impairment, which is the lowest amount, all the way through autism, students with traumatic brain injury, hearing and or vision impaired, going to the $27,000 amount. Next, what is the application window for the John Peterson Scholarship? Previously, prior to House Bill 49, there were scholarship windows in terms of students could apply at various times throughout the year. The window would close and then the window would reopen. With the passage of House Bill 49, they have eliminated that, so it is an open registration or open enrollment that's allowed for the Peterson Scholarship. How many Cleveland Heights students receive the John Peterson Scholarship? And this just shows you the increase of number of students that have participated in the scholarship. And we have our data beginning in 2012, 2013, all the way until this year. That number, given the fact that there is no longer a window where the window closes, this number is likely to increase. You can see the estimated amount is $1,830,000 approximately, that is going towards the John Peterson Scholarship as students take those scholarship dollars and go to providers.
What do you attribute the eightfold increase in the number of students taking advantage of the program?
I attribute the increase to the choice, that there are increased choices. It's sort of like if you build it, they will come. We have a large number of providers in this area, so it really, in my opinion, has less to do with what we're not doing and more to do with what parents are seeking. It would be very similar to, let's say, a university model. Some students in the university model choose to go to Kent State, which is a state university. Some choose to go to Malone, which is a private. So it's more about choice and what those choices offer versus what one provider or one district isn't providing. So it's, to me, in my opinion, more about choice.
Now, are these students, I think I sort of know the answer, but I want to get clarity on it. Is this a CHUH system student who then opts to go to one of these providers, or are these students who reside within our boundaries, but who are not currently a public school student, but are now using these public dollars to go to a non-public institution?
It's basically the latter, but it's a combination. There, some, without a doubt, would be attending our school who have opted
Right.
to take those dollars and go to a provider.
Do we have data in regard to that showing, because I know Mr. Register's done a lot of work on this, and, we've seen that this is a huge amount of dollars. The concern I have is that students who were never intending to use public schools to begin with, however, are using public dollars. So that, do we have it disaggregated out where we break out that we,
Students who never necessarily attended,
Right.
but I do believe that we can get that data, definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
We do have, the deductions, and the numbers that we have for the state dollars deducted are broken down by the school and
Gotcha.
the number of students that go there. So, for example, we can see in 2017 that, 214,000 are going to Hebrew Academy. One might argue that that's a group of students that we would never have seen. So
Right.
I think you have to make some assumptions,
Yeah,
in terms
It goes
of.
back to the
but,
choice.
Yes, yeah, so.
What they're seeking versus what we're not
Right.
providing.
Do we do the assessment?
Yes.
And so we do the assessment and write the IEPs, and they take the IEPs and shop it around,
Correct.
essentially.
They're allowed to take their evaluation, their ETRs, and then we create the IEP, and they are allowed to exercise their choice and take their dollars and go to a service provider. Correct.
So if you went to, let's say, the Lawrence School, for example, in, oh God, what city is that in?
Rexville, I think? Or Broadview Heights?
It's in
It
Summit
doesn't
County.
matter.
Never mind.
So
That's all the same.
I thought it was that school district that had to do the IEP for that child.
If they are attending, if they're from our district,
We have to
We do
they
it.
can, we do it. They
Okay.
can take their scholarship dollars and go to a provider, but we're responsible because they're ours
I
as a
see.
district of residence in this particular case.
Do we know what it costs us to process all these applications? I mean, I think it would have been easier if we sort of know the deadline, but there's sort of a state mandate then that we've got to process these applications. That's a lot, 168 kids, that's a lot
And there's
of-
no longer a deadline or a window for processing. It is open now, that it can be ongoing.
Well, how many staff members do we need to have just to manage something like that?
Right now, in terms of doing the ETRs and the IEPs, we have a school psychologist who works with we call it our non-publics, and we have a special education coordinator who is assigned to do the IEPs for the non-publics.
Jim, if memory serves, when we were getting another presentation, I think we had at least two or three, the equivalent of 2 or 3 FTEs spending time just,
Yeah,
I mean,
just-
just processing
Right.
all of these IEPs and all the paperwork. I mean, it's crazy almost, to a degree.
Well, I know I've gotten complaints that sometimes parents don't feel like we're processing these things fast enough. I mean,
Well, we do follow the mandated timeline.
okay.
And that is reviewed by the Ohio Department of Education. So if we're not meeting the timeline, we're dinged for it, and we haven't been. I can imagine some people may be impatient because they do want, they're ready to go now. But given a 45, 30-day time limit, we do hit the time limits. And it is about 45 days that we're allowed
Okay.
to complete the process. And if I'm a parent and I'm ready to go tomorrow, I mean, we've got 168. We will not exceed our timeline, but we will use the 45 days if needed. But it is not an attempt to delay the process. It's just there's a lot to process.
I believe it.
The list of assessments, I guess, I don't know, it looks like it was about 8 or 10 on there. But are there more? I mean, do you use the DSM-5? I mean, can anything in the DSM-5 qualify?
Let me go back to, these are the disability categories that receive funding. The DSM-5 pretty much gives us guidance, but these are the areas that qualify. We assess students, and students quite often sometimes will go to an outside private evaluator to get an assessment. They bring that to the district, and then the district, our obligation is to take it into consideration.
Do we see, post-traumatic syndrome? Do we have any kids with that?
It's very possible that we have students in some of these groups that might have, particularly in group number 3, in terms of emotional disturbance, might have some sort of post-traumatic occurrence or issues going on and would be taken in consideration as a part of an assessment. It wouldn't be a standalone item, but could be taken in consideration.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I think about is that there are things that happen in the district that could cause some trauma. We dispatch experts to schools when maybe there's a shooting
Crisis.
or various things. And I was just wondering, we don't often end up with those kids that might have witnessed something that was traumatic.
In terms of students with a disability, the disability has to have an impact on your ability to perform and access the curriculum. So quite often, an occurrence may not have an impact on my ability to access and perform within the curriculum. So we're looking at students who, whatever this disability area it is preventing them from performing. They're having difficulty accessing the curriculum and they cannot perform. So we're looking.
That's what the assessment says.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question. Now that I look at these 6 categories, and you mentioned Hebrew Academy, my question would be, Lawrence School I get because of, how is Hebrew Academy a specialist in any of these categories where I would take I don't understand how Hebrew Academy to me is like a religious school. So how are they a specialist in any of these categories that warrant dollars going, I don't understand that.
It's my understanding, and I am not an expert in Hebrew Academy, but it is my understanding that they contract with a service provider.
Okay, I see, I get it, okay, I see,
Let me ask a different question, so while he's seeing what's going on there. Are those discrete, or can you qualify in more than one category?
No.
Okay, and then, because some of them, it seems like I could come up with a pairing. So 27,000 is the most. I realize this is a difficult question for you to answer, but is it your sense that the students who make use of this are well-served in terms of the needs that they have? Or do you not have a way to judge that?
From my knowledge base of some of the providers, it is not difficult for me to answer at all. As a licensed speech therapist myself, the best option for families is the public school option when it comes to students with disabilities. We have the longest standing history, and we have a culmination of services that we can provide. It is the best option, and we meet with these families annually when we offer them their free appropriate public education. Again, we meet with every single family annually, and they're reminded. There are a few families that we hear from that are seeking the services that we provide here, but once they relinquish FAPE, which is a free appropriate public education, and walk away, quite often they are getting limited services versus the services. It's very difficult for a provider to have an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a speech pathologist, to have access to vision services, low vision services, to have access to hearing services and audiological services. So we are the best choice, and it's not difficult for me to say that.
Thank you. So let's take that leap of faith for just a minute, that the purpose of, please, the purpose of the scholarship was to serve a set of children or set of students as best as they can be served. Is the provider, what's the checks and balances from the provider standpoint? That they have to meet, what criteria do they have to meet to say, in category 6, I'm taking category 6, and this provider has met some level of criteria so that that child is going to be well served?
The state has an application process for providers. There has been a lot of pushback from school systems in terms of what our qualifications and what we're required to be and have versus what a provider can be. You have a list in your packet of the various providers, and you'll see that some of the providers are actually individuals. They're individual people. That individual person might very well be, they might have let's say, a doctorate in education. But does that mean that they are an expert in some of these varied areas? Not necessarily, but the state allows that you have some sort of an education degree. Just like we see in many of our charter schools, you have to have a degree. That degree may be in hospitality management, and you might be teaching literature, but you just have to have a degree. So it's not a level playing field, and that's some of the complaints that school systems have.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Who assess these providers?
The
Is
Ohio
it the
Department
state
of
or-
Education,
Right.
So we have nothing to do with that.
nothing.
So I guess where I was going with it, and I realize that, as we've discussed already, that some of the people taking use of this, making use of these scholarships probably wouldn't choose public education because that's just not their choice. But for those who might, is there, and again, you may not be able to answer this, as more sort of a food for thought, is there a benefit to us being sure that we are explicit about the care and the programs we offer that would be in the best interest of the child and a specific child? Now, I get it, we have a hurdle to get over, perception, whatever sets of things you want to get, but is it worth, I mean, if you're looking at $1.8 million going away, is it worth us making a concerted effort to make sure that that everyone really understands what we can provide a child? Because in the end, the whole point is to do right by the children.
Absolutely. I do stand behind one of the actions that we take, which is, again, meeting with these families one-on-one on an annual basis and sharing with them. We take the data that they have from their current provider. We look at that data. We talk about services that we could provide, what we could offer. So it's a deliberate attempt to get the parent to come and access the public system. It is very purposeful at these meetings. So, yeah.
And I understand
Oh, no.
how it's a high hill to climb sometimes. So
It
thank you.
is. Okay?
So when you, I know you have to use the term scholarship because that's the Ohio Revised Code. So, but in reality, it's the Cleveland Heights University Heights School District scholarship because we're paying for this. And it's an unfunded mandate we all know it's an unfunded mandate, but just so we understand, these are local dollars that are going out the door.
Correct.
A lot of times to serve kids that we know would be better served in the public environment that has significant state scrutiny.
A history of service.
Well, and whereas I look at these providers and I know they don't have the depth, I mean, not even close, to what, our folks are able to provide. So do we actually know really what this costs us from, I mean, we don't get a state, if someone is taking like the speech and language impairment scholarship, the $7,588, how much of that is the state share? How much is that is actually coming from local sources?
Well, there is a weighted share by category, so we could go back and give you what that is, but, you know, from a community school perspective, it's 30%.
Okay.
Is the state share of, so I would feel pretty comfortable in saying that that would be an
It's about
equivalent.
almost 5,000.
Yeah, they do, I mean, they do weight each category, and we do get additional money for
Okay.
each student, depending on what the category of the disability is, but, and I would actually have to look at the numbers to see if that percentage varies by category or not, but I think it would probably, we'd find it would be fairly consistent.
Okay.
Would you do that?
So we could do, absolutely, sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll get back to where I left off. I want you to see the trend. We want to be very transparent. Here is the Cleveland Heights trend as it relates to the Peterson Scholarship. And you can see that the trend is going in an upward direction. It is increasing with each year. But let's take a look at the state of Ohio trend, and this is the trend across the state of Ohio. So in some regards, our trend is following that of the state with the Peterson Scholarship. Again, in being transparent, we see that the percentage of students who are eligible to participate in the Peterson Scholarship at the state level, there are about 2% across the state who participate, even though there's an upward trajectory. We have a participation rate in Cleveland Heights of 14.48%. What factors could possibly be contributing, or what factor could really be contributing to that large number? In Cuyahoga County, we have 53 John Peterson providers. That means there are 53 providers that are sending notices to families, that interact with advocacy groups, that advertise. They are soliciting these families. That is somewhat disproportionate if we look at the other. I'm looking at the counties that border us. So if we look at Geauga County, they have 5 Peterson providers. Lake has 6, Lorraine has 6, Medina has 5. Shame on me, Portage. I didn't realize Portage actually touches, but it does. Portage has 1, and then Summit, there are 22. So you can see in Cuyahoga County, there's a disproportionate number of providers as compared to the other surrounding counties. There are 53, which surprised even me, and I'm typically up on these things. Okay?
Just, what might be helpful for, I don't need you to send it out to us, but is to normalize that versus the number of, the total number of possible students in that area, in that county, because Geauga and Cuyahoga aren't even, you know, that's apples and oranges.
And I'll definitely do that for you, but what you have too, on the bottom of each slide, it shows a source, and there's a link that can take you, and I'll make sure you get that link, takes you directly to a website that will show you in each county the number of students that are in that county.
Thanks.
Okay?
Can you back up 2 slides
Sure.
now?
One. Oh, let me go back.
One more.
One more?
So it would be helpful to see, I mean, how easy is it to get this 14.48% number? I mean, for example, one of the things that has been helpful is, you know, comparing us with other entering school districts, because they're the closest thing of like districts. Can we see what the inner ring suburb participation rate is?
We can attempt to get that. We'd have to,
Actually,
unless,
we
does
had
Scott
something
have that?
similar. We can get that.
Okay.
We can get that report.
If it's something similar, that's fine. It
Yeah.
doesn't, I mean,
We can
just,
get that report.
I think you know where I'm heading.
gonna
Trying to
hear
get
it.
that.
Mhm.
Well, I think going down that path, I mean, for example, if Lakewood's participation rate is 12%, okay, then it's maybe something, yeah. But if Lakewood's participation rate is 3 and Parma's 4, then again, it would, and even Shaker, if Shaker's rate is low and we're still very high, I think it goes back to, we've been for years, so for the last 100 years, at the nexus of non-public options, but we're also at have the high proximity for a litany of other a whole host of options now. But again, I think the question is, it's a good point, is if
Do a
we're.
comparison.
The comparison to other inner rings, because like Jim said, I think that is a very, very telling, because it gives us the control group, east side and west side, that tells us, you know, how, are we unique or are we not unique? Because if we're head and shoulders above everyone else, then I suspect I know why, but it'd be nice to have some empirical.
I know that last time we looked at this data a couple of years ago, I think it was Orange. Orange City Schools had a high number.
Yeah, that's,
And
yeah, they do have a high
we
number.
were next
Of the
to,
Peterson.
actually, Cleveland Metro. It was Cleveland Metro, then Cleveland Heights, and I think Orange.
Yeah,
Because
when we-
they shared a report with all the superintendents in Cuyahoga County, and so we were shocked, but.
yeah.
Well,
When we
that's
had the
helpful
meeting,
because the only way to, find ways of, protecting us, because this is really taking dollars away from other public school kids, because it's a disproportionate amount of money that's actually going toward these kids. And I'm not saying that they need it or they don't need it, but there has to be some other way to pay for this, as opposed to coming out of our budget. And the only way to fix it is to fix the laws, because these service providers are lobbying.
Very much so.
Yeah, so that's how you see changes be made, and I don't see the public school districts doing any kind of lobbying at all at the State House.
The 53 number represents the entities that actually have, are receiving Peterson money.
It represents the individuals that are providers that can provide those
So
services.
these are not necessarily receiving anything, but they could.
They could.
But they're not, well, I want to be clear, because what I'm wondering is whether or not we've had some growth in the providers as well.
Oh.
Usually if you have money out there like that, and I guess there are a number of people who could be in a profession that could be eligible to receive a Peterson scholarship, and they're just not doing it.
From my review of the provider list over the years, it really ebbs and flows. Of course, I reviewed it in a different district, but it ebbs and flows. It increases some years. It pretty much stays consistent, but a few leave, a few come in. They close shop, then others open it back up. You'll have entities do it, you have individuals do it, so it kind of ebbs and flows, but it kind of hovers around a consistent number.
Is there any, this is probably a fishing expedition, but there's no data as far as if there's 53 providers, there's no data that says, okay, provider A received $5 and provider B received $1 million.
We're able to,
Oh.
yeah.
I think I'd be very curious to see.
In terms of where our students are going, in
Right,
terms
right.
of.
Okay, but you wouldn't be able, you would only know for our dollars going to somebody, we wouldn't be able, like the sketch report, we wouldn't be able to say, okay, this provider is receiving X number of dollars from Cuyahoga County.
We may be able, I may be able to get that information from the
I know,
ESC.
okay.
I
I'm
can
just curious.
check. I can check.
This is the 53 in Cuyahoga County?
Yes, sir.
What did you have to do, Ohio Department of Education?
The Ohio Department of Education, all of it is right there. You just go to the Autism or Peterson Scholarship, and all of the information is there. Their percentages they even have percentages by state. They show all the other states and their numbers. And what surprised me is that we think $27,000 is high. There are some states that I was blown away with the amount. So it varies, very much so. Okay, now let's get to the Autism Scholarship. The Autism Scholarship, similar to the Peterson Scholarship, however, it started in 2004. It provides scholarship dollars to eligible students with autism, ranging from 3 through their 21st birthday. Can be used with a participating service provider, and again, it's strictly parental choice. The value of the Autism Scholarship is $27,000. There is no, as we've just stated, there is no window. Let's take a look at our history with the autism students accessing the scholarship. There has not been a tremendous amount of growth. Some years there were decreases. Right now we are at 31, but again, there is no window that's going to close. So this number could increase throughout the year, and you see that roughly, that estimated 668,000 so far. And this just shows just a visual of the trend. Now let's take a look at the state trend. This is the state trend with the Autism Scholarship and individuals that are accessing the scholarship. And here is the state participation rate is 14%, and the Cleveland Heights participation rate is 20.6%. Again, for the Autism Scholarship in Cuyahoga County, there are 49 providers, which is disproportionate to neighboring counties that touch our borders, and you can see the numbers across those counties in terms of the number of providers for autism.
That's
I'll go back.
autism, not JPSN providers.
Say that again? I didn't.
They're autism providers, not JPSN.
Correct. These are,
Okay.
now, if you have both lists, if you look at both of the lists, some do overlap. So some of the providers will,
Sure.
they fill out the application to be an autism
Have one in
provider,
Portage County.
and they fill out the application to be a John Peterson provider. They do both. Okay, and that concludes the overview. Are there any other questions? And if you have any other questions beyond tonight, you can always email me or give me a call.
Okay.
I just have one quick comment, because I think this is a very emotional and I think, all these things we're talking about, there's definitely a purpose in getting this information. And I understand the thought behind it. But ultimately, as I think Jim mentioned, this is a legislative issue. I mean,
Yes.
you can't necessarily fault parents for making a choice they feel is in the best interest of their child.
Right.
And the dollars are there, and it's legal, and it's legitimate for them to do it. So, I mean, I think it's much more about how we either suggest the benefits that we provide for students as in terms of fighting the legislation, which we all know that might not work so well, but nonetheless, I think that's the positive side of it. And then the problems it causes for the students we have because the funds it takes away from the balance of them. So, I mean, I think it's important that we focus on that end goal of how it is that we're going to be most effective at even having a shot at changing legislation. And I think it's easy for us to go to some of the things about our own community and the people who use it, but that's not going to get us. I don't think that's going to win in the end. I don't think it's going to win the legislative battle. So, pairing with, when all of you were surprised about Orange, I went to Orange. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, Orange has a huge number of private school people who take private schools. They have, and a lot of the things that are being funded, that goes across different boundaries. So it isn't at all surprising to me that Orange would be really high.
Yeah.
So I think we should watch our biases. I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody else, but we should watch what our biases are and think in terms of what it is that how are we going to be most effective at making our point.
And I have to say this about some of the providers and I agree with you that it's about the legislation, but a big pet peeve that I have is that you are a provider, and as a provider, quite often some of these providers might be motivated when they're doing assessments. So they are a provider who they can provide the Autism Scholarship, but they also are a provider that they can do the assessment to see if the student qualifies to be a student with a disability.
That doesn't make any sense.
There's been a group at the state that we fought for years that's a conflict in interest.
Right.
And that was, so I can be a provider and do assessments.
Well, right. And I guess where I was going with my point before is sometimes if you want to look at who you can get as an ally, if we can show our better results with students who have these special needs, maybe you go to the organizations that are the ones who've always, there's Autism Speaks is an autism organization. There's a number of different organizations around that maybe we could look to them to be allies for saying, what are you looking for here? Aren't you looking to give the best service to these children?
Absolutely.
So look at our results. Look at what we have versus any number of other providers.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, my take on it, from is, since it is a political dynamic, in my opinion, again, it goes to orange. I think if you're gonna fight this at the legislature and the State House, the reality is that, it's the same when we talk about the inner-ring suburbs. If you're represented by Democrats in Columbus, it's not gonna move the needle. In my opinion, it's, because I did this professionally, identify districts who are likewise taking a hit economically from these scholarship programs. And if they have Democrats are great, but we need districts that have Republican representation. If those school boards see the commonality of cause, them complaining and contacting and lobbying their legislators, in my opinion, is going to move the ball far more than, Janine can go talk to it in Columbus all she wants, but Janine's in the minority. It has to be districts in Portage, in Summit County, who are represented by Republicans. Then, if they're hearing from their school boards, if they've got 10 or 15 school boards that are complaining to them, that's going to move the needle far more than us. I hear what you're saying with the autism group, but I think that knowing how the legislature works in Columbus, unless it translates into them and votes at the ballot box, I think that's I don't say the choke point, that's the catalyst and the motivator. Otherwise, we're complaining, and again, I'm surprised. I'll use my slightly sarcastic tone that I'm amazed how many religious schools are specialists in these areas, because I would always have assumed that they weren't, because they don't have the depth of bench and depth of field.
And not only am I amazed at not so much of how many religious schools, it can be amazing that just the number of students that receive outside evaluations from providers who are going to serve these students, and then that evaluation comes to the district, and then we have to consider it. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
So next we'll have George.
You got that historic thing next, don't you?
For the presentation for Noble, yes.
This is one of them.
Good evening.
Yes.
I was approached a little over a month ago by Ms. Kara Hamley O'Donnell from the city of Cleveland Heights. And if you're not aware, Kara is the city planner and also the historic preservation planner. And she said that she was aware of a student she was working with from Ursuline College, I'll introduce Rachel here in a second, who wanted to place or go through the process of putting Noble Elementary School on the National Register of Historic Places. And so I met with both Kara and Rachel and heard the presentation and met with Dr. Dixon. We felt that it was something that the board should be presented to the board. So if you have questions, concerns, you can then bring them to Dr. Dixon and myself before we were to proceed with any such recommendation. So I'm going to introduce Rachel Stuckey, who is she's a graduate student at Ursuline, and she's going to do a short presentation on doing such a task and making Noble and placing on the historic register. Here you go, Rachel.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rachel Stuck, and I'm a graduate student at Ursuline College studying historic preservation. After I completed my bachelor's degree last December, I moved to northeastern Ohio from Erie, Pennsylvania. After my first semester of graduate courses, I began interning with Kara Hamley O'Donnell at the planning department in Cleveland Heights. After completing an inventory of historic commercial buildings in Noble neighborhood, I realized the historic significance of the neighborhood and knew I wanted to recognize that by completing a nomination for the National Register in the Noble neighborhood. Today, I'd like to talk to you briefly about nominating Noble Elementary School for the National Register of Historic Places. This brief presentation will provide an overview of the National Register of Historic Places and what that nomination, which will hopefully lead to the property's listing, would mean for the school district. The National Register of Historic Places was created in 1966 under the National Historic Preservation Act. It's operated by the National Park Service in conjunction with state historic preservation offices and the Secretary of the Interior. Its main purpose is to preserve historic buildings in the United States. To nominate a property, several forms are submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office that highlight the historical and architectural significance of a property. If the nomination is approved by the National Park Service, the property is put on the registry. The nomination process for Noble Elementary School would take up to 1 year to complete. The reason why I'm seeking the board's approval before I begin the nomination process is because a property cannot be listed without owner consent. After consulting with several professionals, I've concluded that there would not be any restrictions for the Cleveland Heights University Heights City School District if Noble Elementary School is listed on the National Register. Upon the property's listing, the school district would maintain all property rights that they already have right now. The district could choose to demolish the building and any of the additions, make any modifications, and sell the building without undergoing an extra review process. The district would only be limited with what they do with the school if federal funding, like tax credits or grants, are used to rehabilitate or renovate the school. From my understanding, it is unlikely the district would use federal funds for rehabilitation or renovation. Therefore, this is something the district doesn't need to worry about. If in some circumstance the school district wouldn't use federal funds, the district would have to go through a historic review process. This process would be mandatory whether the building is on the National Register or not, because the original structure was built in 1922 and is deemed historic, although it's not on the National Register. I'd like to also note that both Roxborough schools are on the National Register as part of the Shaker Farm Historic District. As you all know, Roxborough Middle School will be undergoing renovations next year. From my understanding, its listing on the National Register has not limited the district's plans. There are several benefits to a listing on the National Register. First, there are a few financial benefits. State and federal historic tax credits are available to owners of National Register properties that are income producing. This also includes nonprofits. These tax credits are used for the rehabilitation of historic properties and have certain standards the owners must meet. Because the district is not income producing and is a government entity, it is not eligible for these tax credits. However, if the school district ever chooses to sell the school, the possibility of tax credits for future owners would make the property more desirable to buyers and could lead to the reuse of the building for a different purpose. Grants would also be available to future owners. Most importantly, nominating the school for the National Register would act as a way to celebrate the history of the Noble community as well as the school. Other than the Inglewood Historic District, there are not any listed properties in the Noble neighborhood. This would be an opportunity for students, faculty, staff, and community members to celebrate the school and the neighborhood. This map shows historic districts in Cleveland Heights. The red circle represents Noble Elementary School. This highlights the need for the preservation of historic buildings in the area where the school is located. This nomination process, which will hopefully lead to the property's listing on the National Register, will only have positive effects for the community and the school district. It will provide a sense of pride in the community without infringing on the operations of the school district. I'd like to know soon whether you are willing to consent to listing so I can begin the nomination process for the school. I hope to finish this process by December of next year, which is when I'm expected to fulfill the requirements for my master's degree. I'd like to thank you all for your time. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
So, the Noble Library and the Noble Fire Station are not, or the former fire station, neither of those are interesting?
No, they're not.
Well, I mean, I would, since the four of the six of Franz Warner's buildings, you know, the four footprint buildings were the original architect, Franz Warner, and Roxell's already on the list. Noble was one of his other designs, so it's one of the original buildings. I don't see any reason not to, particularly because there's no restrictions on us. And I think from the map, and we all know in the city of Cleveland Heights, I think anything, the more positives we can have north of Mayfield, the better. So if we can support it, I have no problem with that.
I think it's a great idea, but just to do some due diligence on our side, when we were part of the library board, there was some issue regarding the Coventry Library, in its designation?
I think it's a,
Okay, go ahead.
I think it might be, I think there's Cleveland Heights landmark versus, because I think the two buildings I mentioned are Cleveland Heights landmarks, but I don't know
Okay.
that does
Okay.
anything.
Maisie Adams is here. She's
Yeah.
the chairman of the Landmarks Commission.
Let's-
And I think she might be able to shed some light on that question.
Jumping up.
Introduce yourself, Maisie.
I am Maisie Adams. I'm the chair of the Landmark Commission for the City of Cleveland Heights. And it is because those are local landmarks. And with local landmarks, that's really the only place that you have any legislative, what I would call legislative protection for historic buildings. You don't get that on the national level. So the buildings that you reference are, because they are Cleveland Heights landmarks, they have to go through a process.
Got it, okay. Very helpful.
So,
Any other questions?
nice job, Rachel, in your presentation.
Okay, I think
I
what
just-
Rachel is asking us for is that she wants our blessing so she can proceed. I think she feels like she can't do anything without us saying, yeah, Rachel, go for it. Is that right?
Yeah, because once I go through this nomination process, if the listing is approved by the National Park Service, they'll go to the local community and also the owners. And if they say no, then the work I did is, just kind of thrown out to say necessarily. But, so yes, I am seeking approval.
And this doesn't require formal board action. I mean, as I represent the district and signing a lot of different things as the owner rep. So we were just coming to you again to get sort of a non-required vote to say it's okay to proceed with this.
I think the noble parent has a
Yeah,
question.
yeah, Rachel, first, thank you for coming. I actually live, full disclosure, I live in the Noble district. I was the PTA president at Noble, so I have certain emotional ties to it. Having said that, I just want to highlight something you brought up, because the one concern I always have is tying the hands of future boards. My understanding from what you said, and I realize you articulate well, but I want you to articulate it again, is that nothing, even if we say go for it, does that in any way in your eyes tie the hands of a future board? Say they want to sell the land, they want to demolish the building, they want to, anything. And I know I heard it, I want to hear it again.
Yeah, no, you can demolish the building, you can sell the building, you can make any modifications that you want. Unless if you're using federal funding, which you wouldn't, that's when you have to go through extra review processes.
Right.
So no, it doesn't tie your hands.
Okay, and yes, I heard it the first time, I like to hear it again.
That's okay.
And you should know, I mean, also, it was fun seeing that. If it would help you in any way, I was the PTA president when the 80th birthday was done, and so I have all those pictures, and I had someone for every decade had gone to Noble who was at that. So I actually probably have contact information if that would help you with your.
Yes, that'd be great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now George is going to present on the Coventry building lease. He's going to provide a lease update for us.
We wanted to give you an update since Coventry has been in the local news, and we know that we have haven't really given the opportunity to give you an update on where we were financially with rents received. So that's why I provided you with a spreadsheet that shows to date that we only have one signed lease returned from, where am I at in here?
Welfare.
Belfair, and no one else has returned a lease. And I have one change, because just today I received a check from Artful, so that would bring them to current rent as far as rents due. But I tried to get as much information on a spreadsheet to share with you so you can see a snapshot in time where we're at.
I guess,
Questions?
so basically, the biggest one who owes us money is Coventry Village Daycare and Urban Oak. I guess Urban Oak, correct me if I'm reading this correctly or incorrectly. Urban Oak and Coventry Village Daycare provide well over half of the rents collected,
Yes, sir.
correct? Okay. Coventry Village Daycare is woefully in arrears, and I believe they're going, of the tenants who have been uncomfortable with what we've chosen to do, they've they're looking at other spaces.
They have found another space and are in the act of moving out to go to that space.
Urban Oak, I assume as well, is likewise moving out.
I have,
Oh,
I've
no.
sent numerous requests for leases to be returned, and I have had no communication back.
Not to be, well, I don't care. The question I pose is, the option was to go to them, to give them a month-to-month lease, was what we presented to them. The city of Cleveland Heights said, hey, whatever our arrangement with the schools are, you guys are comfortable to July of 2018. Since they do not have a signed lease, they're still in the space and they're still writing checks. Are they technically squatters, or what? I mean, from a landlord standpoint, what would we call these folks?
I would have to check with our attorneys. I mean, even with Coventry Village Daycare, I had to go through a process.
Right.
And we're in the middle of the process right now with them, and they haven't paid rent since May.
Right.
The other tenants are paying rent, but they're not in a current lease. There's probably some legal
That's what
options that we have, but I would have to check with the attorneys
I'm
what
not
the next steps. Frankly, I haven't proceeded with any of them because we're in a process with the city and hoping that that would transpire here soon. It just hasn't happened.
I mean, I'm not saying, hey, I want to evict folks. I'm just trying to find out what, from a legal and nomenclature standpoint, I'd like to know what to describe these individuals. If you're paying month to month, but you don't have a lease, and I'm just curious what that,
I would imagine, and this is me speaking without an attorney, if they don't enter into a lease, we're going to have some legal right to evict.
well, I mean, that's, I'm just trying to get from a language and nomenclature standpoint. But I guess, we had a brief window of equilibrium when Artful moved in and everyone was paying their rent, where the rents equal about.
That's why I provided you, the utilities that you see receive, and our utility bills are historically behind 1 up to 2 to 3 months. So that's just utility bills that we received to date. You can see that electric, I haven't received anything for September, October.
And, because I know I shared this with a correspondent from the Plain Dealer, but apparently it didn't make the cut. If an HVAC unit went out, we would be.
We're obligated to replace it,
And
yes.
if we had a horrible storm that ripped the roof off, we would be.
Obligated to repair.
Okay. And any, a large-scale roof repair or a new HVAC unit would be well over 6 figures, correct?
The last HVAC multi-zone replace was at Canterbury 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember exactly. It was $135,000.
Okay, so God forbid a worst-case scenario where we're in a 6-figure outlay, we will be spending 6 figures in capital cost to continue to allow folks to be in there generating, okay, we would be taking a loss.
We're taking a loss right now.
Right, it would be at a far greater capacity.
Yes.
Do we have any sense of when, if we'll ever see these leases signed?
Mr. Silverman, I haven't received them yet. I don't think we're going to
Okay,
receive them.
I have to ask. That's what I do. Okay.
Do we have confidentiality provisions on the monthly rents?
It's public record.
It's public record?
Everything that we do ends up being public record, yes.
I
So
mean,
no,
they're
there's no.
really below market.
Well, that's why I shared it with you. I did, again, the search I did was very brief, just to get you an understanding of what, how well we're treating our current tenants. And that, what I did is I took the high, the low, and I actually took the ones that I pulled off a Google search of Cleveland Heights, commercial rents, going rates, took them all, averaged them out, and that's the $17 a square foot is the average.
So excluding Artful, Ensemble Theater, I want to make sure I have all the, Urban Oak, there's no one paying rent over $500, and even the distance between that and the next one is a couple $100. I mean, so their rents are just a few hundred, if not even $100.
Frank, if you remember, if we go back years when we started to do this, Mr. Chagos made an attempt with the city, and the city actually helped us get tenants. And it was to, instead of having a property sit there unused, it was to try to get tenants in there so the building wasn't sitting there vacant. So to get tenants, we gave away the store pretty much, but it was the right intention. It was for not-for-profits. Coventry Village Daycare is the first for-profit entity in the building.
Right, I think we don't want to recreate history. I think that what you just said is a good assessment of what the thinking at the time was. But what we're looking at now is a good argument for why we should stick to our core business, which is educating children, not renting. So I think that's why we're making the efforts to move to the next phase
sir.
in this endeavor.
So our letter of intent with the city is to, I mean, we basically feel like they've got the master plan in place. You know, they are best suited to try to find a purpose for that building.
Yes.
Correct.
And we actually, that's what we agreed to. They haven't signed the document and sent it back to us yet. We communicated with them recently.
Correct.
We haven't heard back from them?
No.
Well, we probably should talk about what next.
Right, because as of June of 2018, everyone leases up?
Their leases
Is
are
everyone-
all, except for Belfair, have expired. They have not entered into the new leases that they were offered, so technically they're out of lease right now.
Okay.
But the leases, if they were to sign and return them, they would be month to month. The city, as Mr. Silverman offered sort of a guarantee that no matter what occurred, they would protect them until June 30th of 2018.
Well, and I'll ask you the question, and it's a leading question. I'll admit it's a leading question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I know frequently people will say, oh, we even put money and what have you, time and effort into their spaces in the building. Now, the flip side is that I guess the question I'm posing is, for example, Artful subdivided, put walls up in the second floor, and I know Ensemble's done alterations and modifications of their spaces. Those spaces were specific to their needs. So if they were to leave and vacate the building, because I know specifically I've seen this in the Urban Oak space, their alterations and modifications were specific to them. So if we were to find a tenant who wanted that square footage but didn't want their modifications, that could be a deterrent for that prospective tenant if we continued our current model. Or, I guess, I'll throw a question out there, theoretical. If we had somebody who was interested in a space, but it didn't meet their needs, would we be incumbent upon modifying it for their use, or would we say, hey, you have to fix it to your
All
needs?
our leases have put that burden on the tenant. So Artful, Urban Oak, they all had to put that money in up front.
Okay.
And if the board decides to move ahead and entertain prolonging this or continuing it, I'd have to put some of the deferred maintenance onto the permanent improvement budget. We have to.
Well, I guess.
The roof being number one.
I guess where I'm going is if somebody said, yeah, I want the second floor, but I don't like the way it's been subdivided.
Burden's on them to change it.
Okay, exactly. So that theoretically could be a theoretical deterrent for the modifications the current tenants have made to the structure could theoretically, and this is all theoretical, be a deterrent for a future prospective tenant if a tenant moved out. Because we would say, hey, we're not doing it, it's up to you.
Right.
Okay.
So in our last joint board, Cleveland Heights City Council meeting, it was discussed that let the Coventry Peace Campus folks present to us. And Ron, you basically spoke for the board and said, look, this is in the hands of the city. You know, we've given the opportunity to the city to look at this. You know, I think we really need to go back to the city. I mean, I see words that were written in the Plain Dealer on Sunday, but, you know, I don't know the accuracy of that information. Can we get an update from the city of where we're at with this, and if you could share that with us?
Okay.
I mean, I think I'm starting to get ants in my pants when it comes to this. I mean,
You're starting to get what? Ants in your
Yeah,
pants?
strike that from the record.
Hear
There's no
that?
ants on this property. No, but I mean, this is getting a little bit out of hand.
Yeah.
You know, this is a very generous offer this school board has made to the city. $1 for this building to do what's right for the community. And I know the city has a process that they have to go through, and we have well-meaning tenants that are paying, the ones that are paying are great, okay? But they're still paying really below market rate, and, you know, I can't see how more generous we can be. Yes, it was a shame that building was closed. You know, there was great rationale for it. Some people may agree with it or disagree with it. It's water over the bridge. But the issue here is this is a really great offer for the city. You know, I just can't see us. I don't want to have to be on this board and have to say, we're going to board up this building because we can't afford to keep it open, and we don't have enough tenants that are even coming close to paying what our net cost is. Okay, because that's what it's going to come down to. We're going to board up this building, and that's just going to be bad.
$350,000, I could tear it down for you.
That's
the last estimate that we had.
That in itself is a horror story, and that just distracts us from all the stuff that we should be doing, which is the whole reason we want to give this thing to the city. And we're going to have more buildings. Is this going to be the precedent that we're going to be setting?
Jimmy, you gotta be careful, you're starting to sound like me.
No, it's the ants.
You got Spilkas, that's what it is.
Okay. All right, thank you, George.
Yeah, thanks,
Okay,
George.
so we have a second reading of our policy. So as Paul comes up, I just want to make a quick announcement that starting January, we're going to have a policy review committee. And this committee, it's going to have 12 members. We're going to need a board member to serve on this committee. But this committee will meet monthly, led by Dr. Lombardo. We have 2 teachers, administrators, and central office team members who would be part of this policy review committee. And so we thought it would be best so that we have another group of people who are vetting our policies before they come to the board. So we're going to need a board member to serve on that committee. All right, Paul.
Great. This is a second reading for our attendance policy. Over the summer, House Bill 410 happened, and districts needed to change their attendance policy. Again, there's no action that needs to be taken on this policy, but this is the second reading. When we had the first reading, I did take out what was asked, the Infinite Campus information. So what you have in front of you was the changed policy from the first reading. And I also sent Ms. Wright the Ohio Revised Code, some of the questions that you had for that.
All right.
Okay.
So again, if you have any additional questions, get those questions to Paul. We want to take a few minutes, or do we want to move on to the next item? Okay, we're going to go to the next item, review of the district calendars.
Yes, review of the district calendars. Every other year, a calendar committee is created, and we do look at the calendars for the next 2 years. You have in front of you there, and also that will be not published, but posted on our website starting tomorrow for input. But these are the 2 calendars, 1819 and 1920. The calendar committee met twice, December 27th and also October 24th. When you look at the calendars proposed, they're very similar to what we had the last couple years with just a couple minor changes. You'll see that the spring break is consistent throughout, which is at the end of March. You'll also see an additional day, a day off is the day after Easter, which would be Monday, which then added a day to the end of the calendar. So that's the proposal for 1819 and 1920.
I'm always have problems with these calendars, and I always forget to bring them up, so I'm gonna bring them up now. even though
Okay,
I'm
no
on my way out the
problem.
door. Like, first one is, when do we start giving off Good Friday? Because we didn't do it before 2001. So I'm very curious to see when Good Friday suddenly got lumped into the calendar, because it wasn't there for 30 to 40 years before that. And that's my first one. My second one is, I find it very interesting, we frequently have these teacher compensatory days just before a 3-day weekend, already an existing 3-day weekend. So I'm very curious to see what percentage of our staff come in on those days, because it seems very I'm viewing this from the perspective of a parent who doesn't have unlimited time off, who has elementary children, because I find it very interesting that these staff development days happen to be on the Friday before a holiday weekend. So I'm very curious to see what % of our staff actually come in versus
Come in on
sick.
the professional development days?
Exactly, yes.
Actually, the attendance has been very, very good the last couple of years based on, the Ed Services team, and Ms. Gould has done an amazing job putting together a conference-style professional development and really tailoring the professional development to the needs of the staff. Tomorrow's one of our,
Ari really spoke to that after my first year, and that's one thing Felicia, as Paul said, got in and worked on immediately. And we've been seeing an increase.
absolutely.
And from a parent's perspective, having that, booking end on a long weekend, I mean, it helps, it makes going on college trips a whole lot easier. I mean, it just, there's a lot of good things about that.
I'm viewing it, I hear that from a college, I hear that from a high school standpoint, but I'm viewing it more from an elementary standpoint. I'll introduce this, and I know the super's gonna poo-poo it, but I would say, well, no, because I've already mentioned it to her. Has there been any consideration, well, I'll go back to this year. The opening of the high school was August was very flustered, because we were finishing the high school, we were moving back into the building, and we've opened early, in my opinion, because that's what everyone does. Was there any consideration, owing to we are renovating 2 middle schools, did we consider perhaps pushing back the opening of the 2019-2020 school year to give staff a little more breathing room in finishing the middle schools and getting things up and running?
Well, when you look at the calendar and the way the calendar days changed for the years, you'll see that there is, and I don't know if this answers your question, but you'll see that we're coming back about the same time, which instead of August 12th, instead of August 14th or 15th, we're coming back August 12th or 13th. So to your point, that doesn't help your point because of it coming back earlier. But
that is my point.
But I think with I think the middle schools aren't nearly what the high school was. We were able to get that high school up and running.
So one of the bigger problems here, though, is, okay, so thinking from a high school perspective, you have semesters and you have exams, and I think it's, okay, so one of the problems that we've had over the last couple of years is exams are like a week after you come back from winter break. Just because when you sort of look at when that semester ends, which is really unfair for those kids, because how can you really, you have a break, you don't have any time to prepare for your exams. I mean, it's
I
like,
would argue that you have 2 weeks to prepare for your exams.
okay, as a parent,
I'm the curmudgeon on the board. I'm the youngest member.
I would say that's very hard for a parent. So then you'd really want to push you'd want to start school a little bit earlier so it breaks better. I think it's really great that the team at the high school, I mean, one of the things I found out sitting on the calendar committee is they've sort of worked with the teachers, and the exam period is going to be before the end of the year. Which really makes, so it's going to be a little bit shorter first semester. I mean, the semester's going to still end when it ends. But one of the things that we've also, I think, that sort of throws this off is the semester periods for the upper grades and the trimesters for the lower grades. I think it just sort of messes up the calendar a little bit. I'm not an educator. I mean, none of us are educators except for Dr. Dixon. I mean, if there's a way to look at that, if it makes sense, I mean, I don't know.
Well, I will say that we look at, we have a very diverse student body, and we look at, if you've heard me talk about it before, that summer learning loss.
Right.
So when we have huge gaps when our schools are closed, students from certain communities, they have a longer period of time where their learning is not happening. So we have summer school, which is good, but we have it for those students who must go to summer school. So I think it's good for us to close those bookends as much as possible. I would like, I mean, a lot of districts you see are going year-round school. I'm not saying we propose that. So I think the later we go to school, we're giving our students, some of our most disadvantaged and most challenged students, an opportunity where there's no learning occurring. So the earlier we can go back and push the adults to making sure that we have our buildings open for our students, I think it's good. Yes, we were pushing the envelope this year. We decided to go back early during the high school renovation time, and it was a lot of stress, but we made it happen. So I think with this renovations of our middle school, it's not going to be as extensive as our high school renovations. And that's why, remember, we pushed the timeline to start a little later rather than in January, so they're not going to actually start, I think, until March. So we do have more time so that in August 2019, we can meet that earlier timeline when we go back to school a week actually earlier, right, Paul?
Right.
Well, I mean, I understand the lost learning, and, well, the counter argument would be, we end the school year earlier, and then we start earlier. We're not, because of 795, we're not adding more days of instruction, so the summer break stays the same length, it just shifts in the calendar earlier and earlier, like global warming or something. The only question I was posing was, I guess, and the answer was no, is that we're not examining moving back the opening of the 19 school year, just that 1 year, not 18, but 19, to give us a little more breathing room on the middle schools. We're figuring that, okay, we'll roll the dice, we'll see, we'll hustle to make sure that we're done. Because I'm just looking for George. I'm figuring, because, hey, not Brad, because Brad's out. George, hey, give George a little more breathing room, but we're not giving George the breathing room. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, and the committee also looked at all the first ring district calendars as well as the local calendars, the district calendars around here that were close to us. So we're all pretty much in line with all the other calendars in the
And
first
we're not going to have the extensive renovation. So I think because of that, though, Eric,
I know
I
about
don't,
this.
right, but because of that, I don't think we need to.
I just tried a
Extend the
couple more
timeline.
weeks. I
I know.
figure it doesn't hurt, but
I just had a couple of real quick questions. One, it looks in the way the narrative is written that there's one records day the first semester and two the second semester, but that's actually incorrect, right? The second semester is 2 half-days, so there's one full records day per semester, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And then, tell me, what's the minimum number of days that, per year that a student has to be in attendance? Pupils, what's the minimum, not that each student, but
It's the
what's
hours.
No, well, isn't there a number of days that students, it's hours, just hours?
It's changed to hours now. So I believe it's 1,001 hours for high school.
That's
yeah.
okay, that's my mistake, because it's, the number of days is less than it used to be, so I forgot that it changed to hours, I completely forgot. Okay.
I have a question / suggestion that's always been something I found it irksome that we're polling as much as we're an elected board, we are the polling stations, and the Board of Elections has over time consolidated and reduced the number of polling stations.
Right.
Because of now the era we live in, we don't have the buildings open because of the parents, the parking, and the access, because the buildings are not easy. We can't cordon off, if you will, the voting station. Have we explored the possibility of, from a programming and age standpoint, and especially now that the 2 middle schools will be completed, that if we were to work with the Board of Elections to just have the high school and the 2 middle schools as polling stations on Election Day and not have to close all of our elementaries as well? Have we explored that option? Our elementary buildings, for the most part, are not great ADA accessible anyway. If we were able to not have our elementaries as polling stations on Election Day, we wouldn't have to close them. Have we explored, entertained? I don't understand why.
I'm pretty sure we haven't.
Because to me, it seems. We haven't. Okay.
Can we just ask to get off the lists?
Do we have to be a poll?
It-
It's their right to say if they want to use our
Right. That-
Really?
And remember, we're going to be a partner to the community too, and a lot of our schools can accommodate,
Well-
especially in the voting years where they have large.
Well, that's why I was going with
Yeah.
I mean, with the high school, the high school and the two middle schools are good, large buildings with parking lots, what have you, as opposed to our elementaries, which are not necessarily,
But they're in those certain neighborhoods though. So, you're talking about the seniors who may have to just, drive a half a block versus coming across town. It
well,
may
no,
not be as convenient.
there used to be there used to be far more polling stations, and the Board of Elections has reduced them, and they went from, it was like a little church here or there, they've consolidated. We're now the primary
Right.
hub, and that was just, my thought was with like I said, with the high school and the two middle schools being renovated, to have greater access and ADA accessibility, I look at like a Noble, for example, which is not exactly a great ADA building, it's not a good parking. The issue, my thought was, if we were able, and Fairfax is another example, it's that they're very, very busy on Election Day, so we haven't entertained the idea of consolidating or getting out, but, so, we don't have a choice if the Board of Elections wants to use them?
Actually, there's legislation now that's coming that schools are going to have to close to allow for voting. So that's what,
much for
that's.
home
Right.
rule.
there
So
you go.
can we
Just,
Can we have
a
professional
quick
development
question,
then, though?
George.
I'm sorry.
The
We
Board
close
of-
for professional development. We have professional development on those days, but some school districts don't.
Okay,
Right.
but
Or-
if,
yeah.
okay, and that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's really it's a win-win.
Right.
So, but does the legislation force us to actually close so we can't do professional development?
No. You can still open your buildings for professional development, but for the schools who still have students attend and they just block off sections of their buildings, there's legislation to move away from that.
I just remember that Channel 19 reporter sneaking into one of our buildings. With a hidden camera, snuck in. Well, it's not, people, well, you can't sneak in now, but
Yeah,
okay, just. There's, one of the parent representatives on the calendar committee asked me to bring this up. Not to change anything, but just for consideration in future years. We have many kids in this district of the Muslim faith, and the concern was the calendar is balanced to deal with Judeo-Christian holidays, but no Muslim holidays. I don't know how many kids this impacts. I don't know if other school districts do it. But 2 years from now, when this gets looked at again, can someone just spend a little bit of time and look at it?
But was there any consideration in the calendar committee to accommodate that?
This year, no.
And just to talk about process, you're not taking a vote on this. You have to have it out in public for at least 30 days. So Scott Wortman tomorrow will be putting that on our website, and the community can provide information, and that information will be given to everyone prior to the December 19th board meeting, which this would be voted on. All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I think that's it. So just a couple of things I had. I just want to, the MSAN conference, the MSAN conference went very well, so thank you to the Ed Services team for making sure that happened, along with our MSAN advisors. I know Felicia and Sandy and Bob and even Brad, they were chaperones. But it was awesome to see our students host a national conference. Had a meeting with Cal and, Cal has his MSAN bracelet on. And Ron, Beverly, I mean, it was so nice to see it, and the kids were amazing. It just felt good that we provided, when we look at our strategic plan goal 2, and we talk about equitable and opportunities, our district provided an opportunity for our students to be on the national stage. And that was actually, that was awesome. It felt so good. 2, a Shrek musical. Oh my gosh. Again, awesome event to see our students on the stage. And I had a chance to go Felicia and I went Friday night. I think Bob went Thursday night, and Karen was there Friday night, and George was there Friday night in plain clothing. We was like, is that George? But it was awesome. Again, all the students that participated, and kudos to the administrative team and all the leaders, Jesse and Dan Heim. The music, I mean, the students took full control. It was awesome. So kudos to both of those groups. And I think, again, when you think about strategic goals 1 and 2, the opportunities we offer our students and the skills that they get from being on the national stage, even presenting. You think about those soft skills. They definitely got those soft skills with MSAN students and with students performing in Shrek. It was wonderful. Even the little babies, it was great. And then finally, we know we had the BAC, and I don't know if one of you guys are going to talk about it, but the BAC commission. We have selected a chair and a vice chair. So the chair is Daniel Pentecost and the vice chair is Debbie Herman. At our next work session on November 15th, we decided that we're going to go into executive session. I think we may have one action item. And then we're going to go on a tour. So we're going to have a school bus here, and we're going to take our BAC members and the board members to both of the middle schools. We went to the teams to see the condition of our middle school. So we would start at 6:30, I believe. Is that right, Scott? 6:30, I think.
We'll have to look.
We'll look at the calendar. Yep. So we'll make sure we get that. But that'd be a tour on that night, November 15th, with all the BAC members.
Do
So
we need permission slips? or-
you know, permission slips, but you must dress accordingly. So no open-toe shoes
Very
and
upset by
probably
that.
no shorts.
This
But
is
you
a-
want to make sure.
This is a public meeting,
Yeah, I was
Correct.
gonna raise that.
so,
Yes.
so people can, does it mean anybody could ride the bus?
Everyone, the audience.
Yes.
I have 2 buses coming.
Yeah.
So the public can get on.
Cool.
So are we asking people to let us know ahead of time if they wanna go? Are you just hoping that 2 buses is?
If not, they'll take a personal car.
Yeah, I'd say first come, first serve, otherwise you have to provide your own transportation but you're
That's
welcome
a
to attend.
lot of seats, though. 2 buses is a lot of
Yeah.
seats.
Right. Yeah, and we may not, yeah. But yeah, we just want people to
thinking
see,
one
and the
is
buildings we just want people to see the conditions of our buildings so they can really kind of understand the scope of work that will be done. And that's on November 15th. All right, so that's it for the superintendent's report. Oh, and don't forget you have your in your mailbox, our portfolios are, gosh, what do we call these again, Scott? A quality profile, thank you. Our new quality profiles are out, so you have those.
Great.
All right. Next, we have you, Ron, for President's Report.
Okay, we have had some conversation, and I believe everybody got a copy, draft of a new board member, a board member handbook.
During the retreat?
Yeah. We just happened to receive a communication from OSBA that they have a template that I think Dr. Dixon asked Caroline to order, right?
Yes.
And what we were thinking is that maybe since there is gonna be a change in the board, that maybe the board could actually work with the template, and the new board could actually work with the template and get a board handbook in place. What,
Yeah, so what it would do, it would replace the current board putting the handbook in place for the new board. And it's the current board and the new board together, once they're selected, of working on the handbook. And it's OSBA's template. And so it comes with professional development as well. So they're working with the boards and making sure that what things that should be in the handbook.
And using your initial document as a reference item then, essentially.
well, yeah, it could be. I think when we saw the OSBA had the template, that we figured we would be consistent with what's happening across the state. And they generally do a good job when it comes to board development type activities, so.
But I think also more importantly, Ron recognized that there's a new board and that the current board was making the decision about the handbook. And he thought it would be best if the new board is working collaboratively to make sure that happens. So I think that was your impetus of making sure that. So it just kind of moves away the current idea, which was a good one, but kind of gives you got more input of the people.
Yeah, and we're not just giving it to them. And if we had a board, a handbook that was in place, and we were just modifying it, or boards review it from time to time, it would make sense, but we've never had it. So now that we're at this point, it would be good to have the new board members involved in it too.
So there were some meetings that Beverly and I attended with you folks. And because we're a minority, it's fine.
With who folk?
With Talisa and Scott when we were elected.
Okay.
For training,
Okay.
like your documents, this is how you get your stuff. I mean, it's just all procedural stuff. You've got 3 coming on.
And we have a
That's-
board orientation date is already on your calendars.
I saw that.
Right, and that's
Which
what.
is good.
Right, so that's what that is. So we have someone coming in from OSBA who's going to facilitate a training with all of you and the new board members to
Okay.
kind of, and this is something different, but we thought since we have so many new people coming on at the same time, that it would be best to have someone else facilitate it and making sure that onboarding goes as smooth as possible, while the current members are still on board. So they're not just coming in and starting in January like you did, the 2 of you. Now you come in and meet with the current team and have some time to ask questions with the current team before they take the helm.
So 2 retreats ago, we had one of our lawyers come in and
Sue
speak to us.
Sue Hastings, yeah.
And that was kind of eye-opening. And I think it'd be very eye-opening for a new board member about what you can do and what you can't do
Right.
legally.
We have the similar format. We have someone that's coming from OSBA.
Okay.
Correct.
Good.
So we have that plus the handbook. So we kind of want to make sure that we have all of those things in place for the new members with the current members exiting. Yeah,
That's a good idea.
yeah, okay. So we'll send an update of, just a reminder when that date
Yeah.
is.
Any unfinished business?
Ron, you were gonna, the naming policy, are you gonna bring that up this evening, or
The what?
the naming policy?
Oh, yeah, I forwarded that to you, right?
Here's a copy if you didn't get it.
Eric wanted us to look at the, and adopt a policy. And I wanted, I thought I sent it to you for review, but anyway, I don't think anybody has seen it. You haven't seen it yet, have you? I'd like for us to go ahead and move that forward.
So would you like for us to move it forward with the suggested policy? We go through 3 readings and we start, what is your?
Yeah, I think that's the process. What I would like to do is, can you at the administrative level, or even with the, if we need any legal look at, get that done, and that, can we consider, people haven't, can we have Eric kind of walk through what he has on paper and consider that a reading? Or do we need to do that later?
I mean,
Okay.
tonight.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So what we need to do is we need to probably send something out, and we would have the 15th. We could get 3 readings done before the end of the year.
Okay, all right. One at the library board meeting, can they do that one at the prior? One that
Well,
would get
well,
it
I
in.
think, why don't you
We'll
and I
talk-
talk?
okay.
And let's just sort of figure out how to do this.
What I did basically was, the superintendent had shared with us a number of other districts' policies, and there was one I thought was the cleanest and simplest of the 3, so I basically
Okay.
with all due respect,
Yeah.
great, I think the phrase is great artist copy, so
Okay.
I just took their stuff, tweaked it a little bit to make it, I think, germane to us, and used some of the existing language as well.
Okay.
It's really more fleshing it out
Mm-hmm.
and giving it more detail, I think give it more structure, but at the same time, I think also gives us the flexibility
Okay.
as opposed to being very, very specific about, it's specific, but it's not at the same time. But the key thing was I borrowed it from, I think, Portland, Maine, or one of the systems you shared with us.
Gotcha.
Can you take a look at it and get it out?
I'll get it
To
out
all
and
the
then.
board members.
Right, and then we will, we'll put it in the format that we need to have it in, and we'll have 3 readings, November 15th, December 6th, and then whatever that last meeting in December, and then we'll move forward.
I just sent you the file.
Yep, okay. All righty.
Any other unfinished business?
Oh, Jim, do you want to give a report from the Bond Accountability Commission?
This committee report.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
Still
sorry.
an unfinished business.
It's all the same.
Okay. New
Okay,
business.
any new business?
Oh, Scott, this looks excellent. How is this being who and where is this distributed? Is there a PDF that people can look online?
Yeah.
Similar to last year, we're mailing it out to all the student families.
Okay.
Then we have about 1,000 copies that we distribute throughout the year in packets for realtors, prospective students, for the city, library, places like that.
The interior photos of the high school, can I now post those?
And
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Okay, yeah.
So Shaker sends out a similar piece, and I think they send it to all residents.
I'm not sure.
Can-
Okay.
Can you, I mean, I know the decision's done for
Okay,
this year, this
right.
is the way it is. I mean, maybe a condensed version for all residents? Because at one point, we used to send stuff to all residents, and I don't think we do that anymore.
Correct. We do not do that anymore. We're going to explore it, doing the every door direct mail service to the post office. I don't think Shaker sends their quality profile throughout. It'd be quite costly to get that type of publication across the whole community.
Well, I know my mother-in-law
Yeah.
gets them in her apartment building, and she has nobody in the schools. So they get something, and
Okay.
it's their measurements that matter
measure-
thing
yep,
that come
yep,
out.
Yeah,
I know it's costly. I'm not saying that we should do it.
Right. but just investigate and see what the
I
cost.
think we
of-
should
'cause used to-
investigate
yeah.
what it is. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that I think want to support the schools, but they don't know anything that's going on in them, and they're not even close to a Facebook or a Twitter or any of the electronic media.
And I think we can see from the 4 nights of the play that we have a lot of support, because it was packed.
Oh, just
Every
opening
night.
the building.
Yeah.
I mean, just,
So-
I mean, I
No,
think
I would,
people,
I would echo Jim's. This is excellent. I think with the other stuff you've been doing, the print stuff we have is the best we've had in ever, or the last 30 years easily. So I think the more we can get this, I know you're a digital person. I'm an old fart. I believe in tactile. And when 85% of the population don't have a direct attachment to the schools, something that comes in the mail like this, I think if it's a different grade of paper, if it's, I don't know what it is, I think the more, if we can get it to every household, I think we have to, because it's excellent.
And I think this time, and Scott probably won't say, but Scott actually designed the front cover himself this time. Instead of working with it,
Yep.
yeah. Instead of working with a designer, he did it all himself. Nice work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great, and we ought to invite our graphic arts students in so they can start working on stuff like
We're
this.
trying to
too.
get Brad to do that, so we're working with Brad to get that happen.
Brad's got free time now.
Yeah, Brad has a BAC.
Okay, anything else?
An announcement or two?
Well, announcements comes after board committee reports.
I'm sorry, I thought you were saying anything else like anything else. Sorry,
No,
my mistake.
we were dealing with
Yes, sorry, you're right.
unfinished business and now new business
No,
and now
board committee.
board
report.
committee reports. And I think Back wanted to say something.
Well, I don't think they do. I mean, I think we're at a point where they're still figuring things out. I think they've been asked to attend these meetings and make presentations. I think it's best for those to come from them. But I think one of the big missing components with the prior group, the Facilities Accountability Committee, is that there was really very limited communication they had with this board. I mean, I think maybe once or twice, their president even came to a board meeting and presented, and, so a much cleaner communication between them and expected communication between them and us back, I think is going to be very, very helpful.
And we've given them district emails so that we have communication, and so the sharing of the documents, and that's why it was very important that we selected a chair and a vice chair, so that they can understand that it's not the superintendent's committee and she's setting the agenda and she's doing all the work. So it's their work. So I think that's important, and excited about working with them. And there will be opportunity prior to the voting of the GMP of the middle school in December, an opportunity for the BAC members to join in that conversation about what they see on November 15th, for example, and some of the documents that they're looking at that they've requested, so that they have a clear understanding about the project scope and the budget and so forth. Yep.
Okay. Any other committee reports?
Yeah, I just want to report that I had an opportunity to go to Cincinnati to the Oilers School visit. I'm very excited about our effort to look at a community school. We're going to be doing there's a task force meeting on Wednesday, so tune in to a station near you. We're going to be doing a presentation. The energy was just outstanding. It was good to see a lot of districts from around the state. So this might be, the new thing that's coming in public education. But I'm very excited, and I'm hoping that I can convince my other board colleagues, give them more information about the community and schools.
Good. Good. Thank you.
Oh, and I went to Shrek. It was great. I went on Sunday night. Having the weather was changing, and they were like, no one can leave the building, But yeah, we were okay. And I also had a chance to do some reading over to the Noble children, the first graders and the third graders. And that was nice.
Good. Getting in the buildings. Good job. Good.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Okay, correspondences and announcements.
I got a few. One is I just was looking at the complete district calendar, and it just because it's a set document, so this is not a complaint about, but it says that the next meeting is the 21st. We moved it to the 15th. Before that, we're going to be at the Ohio School Board, a number of us are going to be at the Ohio School Board Association Capital Conference, which is the annual meeting of the Ohio School Boards Association. And also, I just want to say something about the fact that on the 16th is the annual Career Technical Education Fair, which is one of the great events in our district, and I'm very sad I won't be. I've got a conflict that day, but it's a great event, so I just wanted to sort of mention that. And then, just to end with a sad note, maybe some of you saw in the paper, but Councilwoman Mary Dunbar lost her husband last week. And Rob, I didn't know him, but Rob Dunbar apparently was a chemistry professor at Case for quite a number of years, and boy, they went through he did quite a number of accomplishments. So just from the board, we send our condolences to Councilwoman Dunbar. So.
And I don't know if we don't do resolutions or anything. Okay, so we'll just let her know. We'll send a note over.
Okay.
I'll call Caroline tomorrow and get that done. Okay. Announcements, properties. Now, I think if we look real closely at this magazine, I think that's a, clock tower right there
That's-
on the front.
That's
of-
Terminal Tower.
No, clock tower.
No, it's Terminal Tower.
But anyway, they did a nice little layout for Cleveland Heights for the high school. And they featured Brad calendar. Brad's, I think, on every page. But it's a nice little, it's a nice little layout. And part of what I found interesting is that the people who do ads in this, I'm sure they pay for them, but they will feature something that they did, like, was it Thomas Brick or something? They have a spread in there around the high school. And a number of others, Ozane is in there. I'm sure they buy the ads in here. But I think this was a really great thing, and we are featured. I mean, they did a pretty good job in my mind. So what I did is I actually ordered copies for each board member so they can have it as their legacy. And I also ordered some extras, so I think we ought to at least have some around, and maybe there's a trophy case or something like that we can turn to the right page and have on display. So anyway, that's my announcement.
Brad, do you charge for your autographs, or are those for free? Is Alan Wilkinson your agent?
But anyway, I thought it was great. When I saw it,
It's a lot of pages.
I was thinking we can put sheets, laminate sheets.
Yes, that's what
on, like almost a decoupage and piece of wood and hang it in the high school someplace.
well, I'm sure we got enough that somebody can figure it out. I tried to at least order enough that we could think about what it looks like. Okay, anything else in announcements or correspondence? Okay, then we are prepared to move back and reconvene into executive session under the same Ohio Revised Code 121.22G1. So I'll take a motion to do that.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Mr. Gaynor.
Mr. Register?
Yes.
Mr. Posh? Yes. Mr. Zucker?
Yes.
Mr. Silverman?
That was actually yes for me, he just, that's
I thought I heard my name.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yes.